The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the single dad standing before the judge. He looked tired, worn from years of juggling work, parenting, and a past nobody in that room could even begin to imagine. The judge leaned back, smirked playing at the corners of his mouth, and asked what he thought was a harmless, joking question. "So, what's your call sign, son?" No one expected what happened next. The single dad's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile, and in a voice calm but sharp, he said, "Shadowhawk." The name hung in the air like a thunderclap, and suddenly the entire courtroom shifted. Whispers erupted. Lawyers stopped mid-sentence. Even the judge froze, his casual humor evaporating into something heavier. Something dangerous stopped behind that one phrase was a life no one in that room could fully understand, a story of courage, skill, and secrets that could topple the powerful. This wasn't just a single dad in trouble with the law. This was someone who had once walked in shadows, who had earned a name that carried weight far beyond a simple joke. And now, that hidden past had come alive in the most unexpected place, a courtroom that was supposed to be safe, controlled, and predictable. By the time he finished speaking, the tension was unbearable. The judge's smirk had vanished, replaced with something else, something that hinted at the chaos that was about to unfold. In the next moments, nothing would be the same. And as the room braced for what came next, the single dad's calm voice promised a reckoning that no one saw coming. No one in the courtroom could guess how the single dad had earned the call sign Shadowhawk. To them, he looked ordinary, exhausted from sleepless nights, juggling bills, school runs, and a job that barely paid enough to cover rent. But those who had served alongside him knew a different story. Shadowhawk was a name earned in situations most people couldn't even imagine: high-stakes missions, split-second decisions, and a skill set that demanded precision and nerves of steel. As he stood there, calm on the surface, memories flickered behind his eyes. Late nights in dimly lit rooms, coordinating operations nobody outside a small circle ever heard about, moments when one wrong move could mean disaster, and yet, he had walked away from it all, determined to give his child a normal life. But life, it seemed, had other plans. The judge, now clearly unsettled, tried to regain control, but the atmosphere had shifted. The courtroom was no longer just a place of law. It was a stage for something much bigger. Every detail about the single dad's past was a puzzle piece, and now someone was watching closely, waiting for a slip. Lawyers exchanged uneasy glances, and reporters scribbled furiously, sensing a story far beyond a typical case. Even his child, sitting quietly in the gallery, could feel the tension. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that makes hearts pound and eyes dart. Something had been triggered by a single name, a name that promised consequences the single dad could no longer ignore. And as whispers filled the room, one question hung in the air. What had Shadowhawk walked away from, and what was coming back to claim him? The single dad's eyes never left the judge, but behind that calm stare, his mind raced. Every second in this courtroom was a reminder that his past wasn't just a story anymore. It was a living, breathing force that could ruin everything he had built. Shadowhawk had been a shield, a name whispered in secret, a reputation that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. And now, that shield was cracking in front of everyone. Meanwhile, the judge fidgeted with his papers, trying to maintain authority, but his confidence had evaporated. The courtroom had shifted from procedural to unpredictable. Observers in the back row exchanged quiet speculations, some recognizing the name, some sensing there was a layer of danger beneath the surface. Lawyers who had once spoken with certainty now paused, unsure whether to continue questioning or retreat. Every movement, every glance, felt charged with a new tension that no one could ignore. Outside the courtroom, whispers began to spread through the city. Some new fragments of the single dad's former life, rumors of covert operations, elite missions, and decisions that had altered the course of unseen battles. His reputation had traveled faster than he ever wanted, and now, the same reputation that had protected him was beginning to attract eyes he didn't want. People who didn't care about law or fairness, only about leverage, power, and secrets. Even his child felt the invisible weight pressing down, sensing the tension that adults tried to mask. And yet, there was a strange calm in the single dad's posture, a quiet determination that hinted he was ready to face whatever storm was coming. But nobody, not even him, could know exactly how far the consequences of Shadowhawk would reach, and who in the shadows had already started moving. The courtroom felt smaller somehow, the walls closing in as whispers swirled like a storm. The single dad shifted slightly, the faintest tension in his shoulders betraying the calm he projected. Every second that passed seemed heavier, loaded with the knowledge that the past he had buried so deeply was now clawing its way back, unrelenting and unstoppable. The name Shadowhawk wasn't just a memory, it was a trigger. Somewhere, someone was watching, waiting, and calculating. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control, but the usual authority in his voice faltered. Questions that had once seemed routine now felt dangerous, loaded with uncertainty. Lawyers leaned forward, eyes sharp, realizing that what was unfolding wasn't just a case, it was the collision of hidden worlds, of lives built in shadows suddenly colliding with daylight. The gallery was silent except for the low hum of tension, punctuated by the single dad's steady breathing. Each inhale a quiet assertion that he was ready for whatever came. Outside, the city seemed unaware, oblivious to the storm of secrets converging in that room. But signals had already been sent, and silent eyes in distant corners were moving. People who had once respected or feared Shadowhawk were now making choices that could ignite chaos. Allies, enemies, and unknown players all were beginning to converge, drawn by the gravity of a single man who had tried to leave that life behind. And then, a subtle shift, a quiet message slipped across the room, unnoticed by most, but not by him. His eyes flickered, recognizing the sign, understanding that the moment of reckoning was closer than anyone imagined. The tension was unbearable, the air electric, and in that instant, it became clear nothing would ever be the same once the next move was made. Just as the courtroom seemed to settle into a tense stillness, the doors burst open, and a figure stepped in, someone nobody expected. The single dad's eyes narrowed, recognizing a face from a past he had thought long buried. The whispers in the room grew louder, but he didn't flinch. Something in that stranger's presence shifted everything. This wasn't just a witness or a lawyer. It was someone who carried the kind of knowledge that could destroy lives and careers in an instant. The judge blinked, clearly caught off guard, and the room held its collective breath. Questions now hung in the air, heavy with suspicion and fear. Who was this person? How did they know him? And more importantly, what did they want? Every move, every glance in that courtroom now carried a double meaning. The single dad felt the old instincts rise, the shadow of Shadowhawk returning with a force he hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, outside, unseen eyes were tracking every detail. The story was no longer just a legal battle, it was becoming a dangerous game of strategy, reputation, and hidden power. The single dad's child, sitting quietly in the gallery, sensed the stakes had shifted again, though they couldn't yet understand why. The room had become a nexus of tension, a point where past decisions collided with present dangers. The stranger stepped closer, and a low murmur swept through the courtroom. It was a signal, a reminder that the past never truly stays buried. Every secret the single dad had hoped to leave behind was suddenly alive, threatening to unravel the life he had fought so hard to protect. And in that moment, the audience could feel it, the calm before a storm that would change everything. The stranger's steps echoed through the courtroom, and all eyes fixed on the single dad. Time seemed to stretch, every heartbeat loud, every breath a countdown. Then, with a quiet but commanding voice, he said something that froze the room. "You shouldn't have brought this here." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, one that carried the weight of 1,000 untold missions, of a life lived in shadows that now had no place for compromise. In that instant, the single dad made a choice. Years of secrecy, years of pretending to be just an ordinary man, fell away. He revealed the truth behind Shadowhawk, detailing the missions, the sacrifices, and the choices that had shaped him. The courtroom listened, wrapped and stunned, as whispers turned into murmurs of awe. The judge, once smug, now sat pale and uncertain, realizing the depth of what had been hidden. Lawyers and spectators alike began to see the single dad not as someone accused or ordinary, but as a figure whose past demanded respect and caution. Then came the twist. Just as the tension seemed to settle, the stranger stepped forward, removing a badge, revealing that they were not an adversary but someone sent to ensure the single dad's past deeds were recognized and to protect him from a force that had been quietly moving against him all along. The courtroom gasped, the child's eyes widened in amazement, and even the judge could only stare. In the end, Shadowhawk had not only survived the reckoning but had turned the tide, exposing hidden truths and protecting those he loved. Yet, as the room exhaled, a subtle signal from the stranger hinted that this victory was only the beginning. Someone, somewhere, had already taken notice, and the real challenge was only just starting. The courtroom slowly began to breathe again, the tension that had gripped everyone easing into a cautious calm. The single dad, finally able to relax his shoulders, looked down at his child with a quiet smile. All the fear and uncertainty of the past weeks, the hearings, the whispers, the hidden threats, had led to this moment of clarity. He had faced his past, revealed the truth of Shadowhawk, and shown that courage wasn't just about secret missions or hidden skills. It was about protecting the people who mattered most. The judge, still recovering from the revelation, cleared his throat and nodded, a gesture of respect now replacing earlier skepticism. Lawyers and spectators whispered, not with judgment, but with newfound understanding. The single dad had turned what could have been humiliation into strength, proving that even ordinary-looking people could carry extraordinary lives behind their quiet exterior. His child, eyes wide and shining, reached for his hand, understanding in a simple, unspoken way that their father was a hero not just in stories, but in real life.